Even serial killers live next door to someone. Say what? What's going on, friends? It's the summer of 2018, and today I'm going to do something a little different. I'm going to review a movie called Sommer of '84, a brand new horror thriller by a bunch of directors that I cannot pronounce the name of because they're French, but the directors of a film from a few years ago called Turbo Kid, which was also an excellent film. And today, let's talk about it, shall we? So Sommer of '84 takes place in 1984 in this town in Oregon in the Pacific Northwest. It's nice and gloomy. It's a nice setup for a horror film. This group of kids led by a kid named Davy, Curtis, Tommy, and Dale. Ooh, sounds like a boy band. But essentially, you know, they're a group of kids, the suburbs, all the craziest shit happens in the suburbs, as I can vouch for living in the suburbs. But essentially the setup of the movie, there's a group of kids, you know, they're summer vacation, they're hanging out, they're playing a game called Manhunt, which is basically another word for hide and go seek. They know something weird about Wayne Mackey, which is the local cop in town. He lives across the street from Davey. And essentially Davey's a paper boy. He's dropping off his paper. He goes inside his house, helps Mr. Mackey with some stuff downstairs, lifting a table. He notices like a weird room that has a lock on it, a padlock on it. He has like a dark room for photos, but it just seems really odd and off, and everything's dark and dingy down in the basement. It kind of gives you that horror element of something that just doesn't feel right from the get-go and from the start of the film. Early on in the film, it has a lot of nostalgic 80s elements to it with, you know, TV shows like Stranger Things, or, you know, like Steven Spielberg films back in the 80s, like Goonies and things like that. And a lot of great score, great music in this movie. That's one thing that really stood out to me early on in the film. It has a very John Carpenter-ish soundtrack, you know, or a more recent film like It Follows, and like I was saying, Stranger Things, all wrapped up into one. So it really builds this atmosphere in this town in Oregon, and basically coming across this weird neighbor, Wayne Mackey, which is also the cop. In this town, there's a bunch of kids that are going missing. There's a serial killer on the hunt, and everybody's, you know, panicking, trying to figure out who this person is. You know, these kids are missing, and you know, parents in the town are making sure that their kids are going home at night and making sure they're not playing out after dark because this murderer is on the loose and nobody knows who he is. Really, the protagonist is this group of kids, and more importantly, the focal point here is Davey, played by Verchere. I'm not sure how you pronounce his name, but he's the focal point. He's actually a really great actor. He notices something weird about Wayne Mackey, and you know, he's really onto him, thinking that maybe this guy could be the serial killer. He's too perfect. He lives in this house. He just a lot of weird things about him that he notices early on in the first act of the movie that leads up till the end. You know, pictures on the walls of like people and families, but he lives by himself essentially in this house. He says his family doesn't live close by, but he has all these weird pictures, and his house is creepy. And Wayne Mackey has this weird presence about him, this weird aura. You know, something is off about him. And I love Rich Sommer. You guys may be familiar with Rich Sommer. He was in Mad Men, and, you know, a really great actor in that show. But, you know, in this character, he's a complete opposite character, honestly. A complete 180 in this role. There's just something really eerie about his character, and something just seems off. I have like the 6 o'clock news in the newspaper. It's like the Cape May Slayer. That's the name of the serial killer. And, you know, it's a big part of this movie is really trying to figure out who this could be. They think they pick him up, like in the second act of the film, they think they found the serial killer, but not really. So there's already some little twists and turns throughout the first few acts of the movie. And Davey's thinking it's his neighbor across the street, and something just really off about this guy. So he really wants to investigate. So him and his group of friends, you know, they're breaking into the guy's house, or, you know, digging up his backyard. They think there's like dead bodies back there, and they're proven wrong many times. And the kids' parents are like, you know, you need to stop this, or, you know, you're going to get arrested, especially this guy's a cop. You don't want to be messing around with local law enforcement. About the film, you know, we're given a lot of great nods to 80s films, you know, especially a movie that takes place in 1984. A lot of nods to, you know, like John Carpenter films, a a lot of great nostalgic elements that we see in TV shows today. You know, everybody's feeding on the 80s nostalgia, which is perfectly fine with me because that is my favorite, you know, era of music and TV shows and movies. You know, it's the best, and I'm glad they're reviving that era. A lot of things happen up until the end of the movie. You know, the kids investigating this and trying to figure out who the serial killer is, you know, and trying not to get killed themselves. You know, you're thinking as an audience, I'm like, this would be too easy, you know, with everything that's going on with this Mackie character. It's too good to be true, you know, it would be so obvious if he is a killer. Leading up to the very end of the movie, I want to say it was really, really solid film with all the topics I've discussed already, but the very end of the film was kind of a letdown, kind of disappointing and very anticlimactic. It's kind of turned out the way that you expect, which was kind of a letdown for me because I was expecting a lot more, like a huge twist at the end that we really don't get. And that was probably one of the downfalls or the cons of the film. And Summer of '84 will be released on August 10th. So, you know, I had a really great time with it. I thought the acting, the characters were really great. The chemistry these kids had with one another, you know, they're, you know, 14, 15-year-old boys, you know, they're vulgar mouth. They want to talk about boobs and look at nudie magazines and stare, you know, at this neighbor that's, you know, a teenage girl. With that being said, you know, that was pretty realistic with knowing teenage boys and, you know, me being one when I was younger, about how they talk. And it had that aspect kind of like the Goonies. They're just very vulgar and cuss a lot and things like that. And, you know, the chemistry of these kids was really, really fantastic, and I enjoyed that. The story was great. A lot of great 80s nods in this film. You could see that this movie took a lot of inspiration from, you know, Carpenter, Steven Spielberg, you know, and even recent movies like It Follows and Stranger Things that's on Netflix. And again, I love the soundtrack in this movie. Synthwave, you know, a lot of synthesizers. It's excellent. I love this type of music, and it really builds that atmosphere of a story like this, like a horror thriller, you know, trying to find out about a serial killer. It really worked well with the story and the acting, and overall it came together really nicely with the final product. So overall, I'm going to give Summer of '84 a 3.5 out of 5 synth hair pieces. So what did you guys think of Summer of '84? What did you like about it? What didn't you like about it? Have you seen it yet? Do you guys like synthwave? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to hit subscribe. This is Logan Myerz signing out from the Pacific Northwest. Stay spooky, my friends, and remember, watch out for that serial killer living next door to you. Until next time, cheers!